Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning. The essence of human freedom is the capacity to begin. Hannah Arendt once wrote that. Today we honor a beginning, not of the beginning of the IGF, but of those who dared to speak inside it. My name is Yura Morenets, and I'm the founder of the Youth IGF. Today we will be having this talk on the legacy of the Youth IGF. In 2005, the Internet Governance Forum was launched, a global experiment in dialogue on a subject that was back then mostly unknown. In 2011, a few young voices stepped forward to ask, can youth do more than observe? In 2016, a pivotal moment came with the full room event at the IGF, the first Youth IGF EU delegation dialogue. It wasn't funded, it wasn't guaranteed, but it happened and the space was born. Let's watch now how it started and what it became, and then we will be back in our studio.
Over the past decade, the Youth Internet Governance Forum, Youth IGF movement, has emerged as a global catalyst for youth engagement in internet governance and digital policy. The initiative was conceived in 2011 in Strasbourg by Julia Morenets, MAG IGF member, following recommendations from the UN IGF MAG. Between 2011 and 2015, the concept was refined and youth leaders were trained. The first Youth IGF EU delegation event in 2016 marked a turning point. By 2017, the Youth IGF expanded globally, gaining recognition at the European Parliament. This period marked a surge in youth participation, creating a dialogue platform between young leaders and decision-makers. The movement's influence grew with the establishment of national and regional youth IGFs. These forums became vital spaces for youth to contribute to internet governance discussions worldwide. In 2017, the UN IGF Secretariat launched recognition processes and formal youth engagement through the Global Youth IGF track. This phase focused on professionalization and policy impact. In 2020, the EURID, together with the Youth IGF, created the EURID Youth Committee. The same year, the Youth IGF hosted the influential series of 10 Youth IGF battles, feeding into the UN Digital Cooperation Roadmap. Through over 150 events, 100-plus podcasts in 4 languages, and numerous publications, Youth IGF built a global media presence. In 2021, the first Cybersecurity Skills Summit was launched and endorsed by the European Commission. The Swiss Youth IGF Catalyst event was launched in 2023. In 2024, institutional ties with the European Parliament deepened. In 2025, Youth IGF became an official partner of the Geneva Cyber Week. Impact. Today, with 35-plus national and regional Youth IGFs and over 30,000 community members, the Youth IGF is now a mature movement, equipping the next generation of digital leaders. The focus now turns to expanding youth leadership in digital governance, deepening policy influence, and shaping the digital future with youth voices at the center.
I guess we are back right now and back to our stage, to our studio, and we've just seen the journey of the Youth IGF movement, how it started. Now let's meet the voices that helped to write this next page. I would like to introduce Brande Benifei, who will be joining us shortly. Brande Benifei is the member of the European Parliament and supported us from the beginning. We have with us Julie Ward, the former member of the European Parliament. Julie worked a lot in different working groups and supported a lot the Internet Governance Forum, but also the Youth IGF. Julie, please be welcome.
Yeah, it's really great to be here. I still feel very much part of the IGF youth family.
Thank you for joining. We will be back to Julie in a while. We have with us Daniel Molokele. Daniel, you are the member of the parliament from Zimbabwe. You joined the Internet Governance Forum not this year, I believe it was in Saudi Arabia, so last year in 2024. Daniel, please be welcome and thank you for joining as well.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm happy to be part of this conversation, and I also honor you for the legacy at a personal level. May you be appreciated, Julia.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Daniel, for joining. We also have with us Amira. Amira, you are a member of the Senate from Egypt, and you joined the Internet Governance Forum in 2025. That was your first UN Internet Governance Forum event. Please be welcome. You are from Egypt and you are in Egypt right now.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to join you in such important conversation, and thank you for all your very important efforts on making the voices of youth on the table.
Thank you, Amira. We'll be back to that discussion a little bit later. We also have with us a number of young voices, and actually, they are real leaders right now. They became real leaders, they became real experts. I would like to welcome, and we have with us Razoana, Moslam. Razoana, thank you for joining. You are based in Australia, and you first joined the Youth IGF in 2016, I believe. So thank you for joining in so early hour for you.
Thank you so much, Julia. Thank you for inviting me and to be a part of IGF. It's been an incredible journey, and it's an incredible opportunity to learn, share ideas, and to connect to passionate people throughout the world. It's a very warm welcome, and then I truly appreciate the trust and support.
Thank you. Thank you, Razoana. We also have with us Fatwaza Dancing. You are originally from Nigeria, but you're based in the UK right now. And you became a real, actually, expert in digital. Thank you for joining us, Dancing.
Yeah, thank you, Leah. It's been a great journey working with you and Youth IGF right from the back in the days. And it's a pleasure to having this conversation today alongside every other youth. Thank you for creating a platform and action.
Thank you, Dancing. Of course, we have Levi Sianseki from Zambia. You are right now in Lusaka. Levi, you've been with us for a number of years. You have a lot to share with the audience. So thank you for joining as well. If we lost Levi, we need also to present Sophia. Sophia is joined the Youth IGF just last year. Sophia, thank you for joining. You will be sharing your story in a while as well. As you saw, it's a big family, the Youth IGF. And actually, I would like to share with you how it started. We just saw the legacy, but how it started in terms of the pivotal moment, as we just presented, that was back in 2016. A few people present with us in the studio will recognize themselves. So let's watch this legacy video and then be back to the real conversation.
We are very happy to be here today. We have this opportunity to deliver our message to the decision makers. As always, we say that the voice of young is important, but the difficulty is how we can deliver the youth voice to the decision makers. And this is the issue. And that's why, in this point, this open forum is unique.
I think I have a couple of messages for you. One is that you are the future, of course, of the internet. Most of us in this room who are over 25 have experienced the benefits that the internet has brought to us over the last 20 years. What is important for you is to make sure that those benefits and advantages continue in the future.
There have been over the last year 15 different youth events across the world.
It was born in Strasbourg at the premises of the Council of Europe in 2011, actually, where we organized a meeting with the young aged 14, 16 years old to discuss internet governance related issues. And based on their recommendations was born this Youth IGF, which became Youth IGF movement this year in 2016.
And I think the diversity here at IGF and the diversity of the youth that's here is actually the power that we need to hang on to. So I had lots more things to say, but for me, internet should be part of the intercultural dialogue that helps us to build a safer, better, more peaceful world where we can actually respect each other and each other's differences, but work together so that we can live safely. I hope that's a good message.
And it was a great message. Thank you, Julie, for this great message. And I would like to ask and to turn to Razoana and to Dancing once again. We just said you joined the Youth IGF movement in 2016 and 2017. When you first heard of the Youth IGF, what did you think it was? Dancing, would you like to start?
Great. This has always been a great remembrance for me because I do remember late in the night, one of those days in uni, and I was looking for ways to contribute to the things happening around me beyond Nigeria, of course, within Nigeria. I was in a city called Akure at that time, which is a capital city for another town, another city called Ondo State. You might not know all of that, but the important thing here is I had a heart to dream, and I was looking for ways to contribute based on my knowledge. So I found RGF, and my first thought then was, oh, maybe this is that chance to help support those who are around me. Maybe I would get more trips out of Nigeria to speak and all of. And I realized later down the line that joining Nigeria was more practical than just a wishful platform. It gave me a chance to integrate with world leaders within Nigeria context. I'm talking about things around internet governance within Nigeria. It gave me the chance to go into the grassroots areas and give and educate young people on the importance of the internet, their contribution, and how they even maximize it for personal emancipation. So it grew from just wanting to be a personal journey for me to become community-led initiative. And I think that summarizes the shift in view I saw from the first stage of registering and joining IGF, and then later years down the line, seeing what that result can turn into. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnson. And Razoana, you joined more or less at the same time, at the same period of time as Dancing, actually. And now, nearly a decade later, how has it changed? How has it changed?
Over the years, so initially when I joined, I thought Youth IGF is just a platform where I'm just going to go and sit and hear people talk and hear the leaders talk, and then I'll understand. But then when I got involved by myself, and then over the time, I realized it's not only the platform where I listen, I gather the knowledge, but also where I have seen where the policy discussion are among the youth. It's acknowledging that youth perspectives are important. So, amplifying the youth perspective globally from different countries, from different point of views, was the platform when it reflected. So, now I feel like it's more structured. Initially, it was not that structured. There were lack of mentorship, there were lack of knowledge sharing, there were lack of enough participation. But now I see there's so many people eager to join, eager to learn, eager to participate, eager to share their own knowledge. That encourages me seeing like how the growth has happened over the years and how it is actually an impactful stage where people can originally participate and then raise their voice, argue, and then place their points and then discuss, and then people absorb and appreciate the participation. So this is the growth has been incredible in the participation, then learning, the sharing, everything. It's a very huge platform. It's a very encouraging platform for the next generations as well. So the growing, and there are still room for improvement. There is always room for improvement, but we are still growing together. That makes a big view where we can say that this has been an incredible journey so far, and it's going to be an incredible journey as well.
Thank you, Razoana. I would like to thank you for sharing. And we also have Levi with us. Levi, are you with us or we lost you? You are with us. Thank you for joining.
Yes, I'm actually here.
You joined a little bit later on, so I would say you were second decade of these Youth IGF leaders now, because you are a leader as well in your country, in Zambia. So how did it transform you? Do you feel there was a kind of transformation or not?
I think there's been quite a lot of transformation around engaging, not just in this space per se, but even some of the changes that have happened with regard to the digital landscape at local level. There's been quite a lot of transformation for me as an individual, but also regard to the impact that I think we've made at the local level, shaping some of the policies in my country around how the internet is accessible, especially to the youth and to the young people. Mainly, it's been because of some of these conversations and discussions around different topics related to internet governance as a whole.
So you are sharing something very important right now, Levi, with us. You are practically saying that it's not just a personal transformation of you as an individual, but it's also an impact at local level, at national level. And that's very important. That's where we arrived actually right now and today. Thank you for sharing this. I would like to turn to Julie Ward. Julie Ward is a former member of the European Parliament. And Julie, you once stood in plenary and introduced the idea of a youth IGF to the whole parliament. That created what became our annual Youth IGF EU delegation at the global IGF. Did you ever think it would reach this far? And before answering, I would like to share this momentum at the European Parliament.
Thank you, Mrs. Pietikainen. The next speaker is Julie Ward.
Thank you, President. The internet should be a force for good, a common space that promotes quality education and inspired learning, better communication, creativity, and intercultural dialogue. The internet should support fair and sustainable trade and uphold human rights. One way to improve cyber defense is to improve internet governance, and the annual Internet Governance Forum is an excellent example of multi-stakeholder engagement in a pressing issue that concerns us all. And I'd like to particularly commend the work of the Youth IGF, a network of young people in developed and less developed countries who are active in their local communities and in the online space.
Thank you, Mrs. Ward.
Julie, what surprised you most in how it grew? If we compare 2016 to today, actually.
What surprised me most, I think, was the realization that Youth IGF was not just 1 week a year, but was like 24/7 everywhere. Young people's engagement was daily almost. And I witnessed that because whenever I would make a mission somewhere in the world, I would ask you, is there a Youth IGF group in that country? And I remember I went to Haiti I was a member of the Africa, Caribbean and Pacific and EU Joint Parliamentary Assembly. And I went to our biannual meeting in Haiti, and you said, oh, we have an IGF youth group there. And I met them. And I think I also did the same in Nepal. Actually, I was in Nepal for a meeting, and you managed to broker a meeting with young people there. And I think the fact that Youth IGF was not just something in Strasbourg, was not just something in Brussels, but was something which really did have this global reach, which was young people engaging on almost a daily basis with these issues, with their projects. And at that point, I realized this was not just a flash in the pan. It's a very kind of English idiom. It was not just a kind of a knee-jerk response to a policy. It was genuine engagement at youth level, often in some of the poorest, least developed countries. And I was so impressed. I could still remember meeting those amazing young people in Haiti, and went very far from where decisions are being made in Brussels and Strasbourg, but actually doing incredible work. That would be, and I think that you've come back to me. I left the parliament in 2020, so it's nearly 6 years now since I was there, but we still have a relationship. We still have an engagement. I've been involved in a number of discussions around policy that we've had. And even though I'm not so hands-on anymore, I still see that you are, right? You and the young people, you're still there. And that demonstrates to me that this initiative had a great future and still has a great future.
Thank you, Julie, for witnessing these very warm words. And of course, thank you for all your support. We saw you at the parliament right now. And this support is very important. This dialogue with the young people is what made them make them and what made them the real leaders and what allowed them to have their voice to be heard practically. I would like to turn to Amira and to Daniel. Amira from the Senate in Egypt, and Daniel Molokele from the Parliament of Zimbabwe. In your countries, Egypt, Zimbabwe, IGF Internet Governance Forum is still largely unknown, let's say this way. What's the risk that the youth IGF follows the same path? So meaningful to a few but invisible to most. Is it possible? What is your opinion? Amira, just start, I think, first.
I'll take this from my parliamentary perspective and the importance of putting youth in the heart, because the youth IGF is like any other platform that engages youth. It gives them the voice to do it. But to be there, to have your voice on the table, you shouldn't be doing that from the point of representation, like just we include people because we are inclusive. No, we include the young voices because they are useful, because they know very well how to decide on the future. They are actually the majority of the internet users. This is their fact. So the voices should be included because it's useful to the decision-making process and the quality of which. In my point of view, the parliaments, as in the ministries, as in every decision-making process is taking place. Yeah, it was my first time to participate myself, and I think seeing there weren't that much actually. And for that, I'm trying to promote it. I'm trying to actually transmit my experience there and form circles. What I'm doing now is a project under the title of what does Gen Z want from the legislators, and how do they see themselves being legislators in a sense? Because if we don't have this in mind, we just put either our oversight tools or our interventions to legislate far from where it should be. Because again, the future is on the table now through these voices. So first is capacity building, which I consider extremely important. This is what we try to do. And before we talk about capacity building, we should talk about internet connectivity and the availability of the infrastructure, which makes the internet available, especially that there is a huge divide between the rural and the urban areas. There are layers of connectivity, and that the young voices and the young people have accessibility to the internet and build the capacities together on how to make them good and how to.
I think we probably
How to capacitate them. In brief, it's about spreading the voice, of which my experience is you was through the studio. So I try to more of a spread the word about youth IGF in my country as well.
And then thank you, Amira. If I have to summarize what you just said, is practically stay more visible through the capacity building, offering this capacity building to the young and transforming them to the young leaders via skills, actually, but also be in touch with the parliamentarians active in internet governance. So we put together efforts to promote the internet governance forum first, and then the
And
youth
ensuring
internet
they
governance.
are parliamentarians and decision makers. Yes.
Thank you, Amira. I would like to turn to Daniel from Zimbabwe right now. Daniel, what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, thank you so much, Julia. Just to start by emphasizing that I'm from Africa, and Africa is the most youthful continent in the world. And I'm also from Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is one of the most youthful countries in the world. As I speak to you tonight, our national census shows that over 60% of the national population is less than 30 years old in Zimbabwe. Over 60% of the national population is less than 30 years old in Zimbabwe. So Zimbabwe is a very youthful country. And when it comes to internet governance issues, access to internet, the majority of Zimbabweans who are on the internet are youthful. By far, the percentage could be over 75%. So the internet users in Zimbabwe are very young. So it's important that as the Parliament of Zimbabwe, we have a very engaging and consultative approach when it comes to issues related to internet governance from a youth perspective. Fortunately, in Zimbabwe, there is an active approach in terms of government policy towards youth engagement. As I speak to you, our constitution was recently amended to allow for a youth quota. So we will now have 10 parliamentarians who come through the fact that they're young people. So it's called a youth quota, and they are supposed to push the youth agenda. And they have an opportunity to do that and promote even policy issues around internet governance from a youth point of view. We also have at the Parliament of Zimbabwe the Parliamentary Caucus on Youth Affairs. So everyone who is below 35 years old in Parliament is automatically a member of that caucus, and they have a leadership, and there's an opportunity for that leadership to engage on policy issues with the Internet Governance Forum, especially the youth platform. We also have a National Youth Commission. That is a specific institution that has been set up by statutory law in Zimbabwe to promote youth agenda and youth engagement and youth development. And to that extent, we also have a portfolio committee in Parliament that deals with youthful affairs under the Ministry of Youth. So all these platforms are available, especially knowing that at Parliament of Zimbabwe, we also have a portfolio committee on ICT. So I think going forward, we need to see countries like Zimbabwe taking a more active role in making sure that the youth are at the center stage when it comes to internet governance. And with networks like the one that we have, the Youth Internet Governance Forum, I see more youthful involvement and more influential role for youth, especially when it comes to developing policies that are more friendly towards young people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. We will be back to you in a few minutes. I think Brenda Benifei from the European Parliament has just joined us, and I would like to... Hello, Brenda. I'd like to give you a very warm welcome. You're a big supporter of the Youth IGF, together with other members of the European Parliament. So thank you for that. And I would like to say that in 2025, the European Parliament passed its resolution calling for the renewal of the IGF Internet Governance Forum mandate. A signal that a new chapter may begin. But what about the Youth IGF? Not the side event, but the movement. Not an invitation, but a practice. Not a moment, but a mirror. And so I would like to ask you, you signed actually that resolution. You voted for the European Parliament resolution renewing the IGF mandate. Could you tell us why did that matter to you and what you're hoping would follow?
So I think in general, then I will look into the youth dimension. The IGF idea of a multi-stakeholder, open and constructive and also periodical structure to deal with the internet governance and all the related issues linked to technological innovation is something we can't substitute with something more hierarchical or with something that is episodical. We need the structure that was identified. Obviously, it's important that we strengthen its visibility and its influence with the policy-making process. But I think the formula of the IGF is a very important one, especially in a moment when technologies are also conceived to reduce spaces of debate and of exchange and of dialogue. So I think it's important to maintain the open approach. And I think the role of the youth is crucial. I think that having a youth pillar of the IGF is fundamental because, to be frank, it's especially young people that will experiment and live their lives with the new technologies becoming more and more central, and they will be the first ones to actually deal with the challenges, the pros, the cons, the impacts of the transformation of the internet and all the connected technologies. Very much how long and how deeply I've worked on artificial intelligence here from the European Parliament, and so I am deeply aware of the need of the youth perspective on how we deal with the interaction between the internet, AI, and new technologies in general, looking at the impact on the lives of everyone, starting from the youth. So I think that this dimension is crucial. It's also fundamental, to be frank, for our democracies, that people coming from all kinds of countries, also with, in fact, not always fully democratic, but having youth organizations and young people that together can have a dialogue and find together ideas and solutions regarding where the policymakers should go, the regulators should go, the states should go, and the international organizations should go on these topics. So having young people engaged are for sure crucial priorities for us. I tried to do my part when I was in the last IGFs to actually be working together with the youth of the IGF for debates, exchanges, and working on ideas on how to advance the mission of the IGF. And I think we still need you. And in fact, we need to expand the role of the Youth IGF pillar. So I'm happy that we have this moment today to discuss this and that you wanted to promote this discussion, because I think it's especially important looking again, as I was saying earlier, of the international cooperation dimension to build bridges between different parts of the world. The youth can do that better than the other generations. And so it's very important that we support them in all means.
Thank you, Branda. And actually, from the perspective of international cooperation, I think we are just great in our studio. We have the Middle East, we have African countries, we have Europe present as well. And you just mentioned, and that's true, we have this annual dialogue with the European Parliament and the members of the European Parliament under the Youth IGF EU Delegation Open Forum at the annual Internet Governance Forum. So the Youth IGF is now visible in Parliament, but visibility is not the same as power, right?
Yeah.
Can we say honestly that youth inclusion in digital governance has moved beyond performance?
I think we can do better. I agree. But we should start from what we achieved already, building a bridge, a dialogue that, as I said, can have some continuity. But I think that the idea of the European Parliament, we discussed it with many colleagues, to have a more permanent working group on the IGF that can include also the dialogue with the youth and the young generations, I think would make it better to do some work between the IGFs in a more structured way. So I think it would be important to actually do some more work on our side to create a more permanent work that is also visible, so to be powerful between the IGFs. Because I agree, power and visibility is different, and we need to make that step further. And I think many colleagues here agree with me that we can do that step, we can take that step, and I will be glad to support that.
Thank you, Branda. And of course, we do count on you, and we know we can count on you. Would you have with us Julie Ward? Julie was from S&D. She was member of the European Parliament in the previous mandate. Julie, would you like to react to what Branda just said?
Yes, I think Brando is actually a very young parliamentarian, was one of the youngest when we were elected together in 2014. But I think the idea that young people know about technology, know about the internet because they have grown up with it is very significant. I just want to share a little story that I think is relevant here. I'm a member of Culture Action Europe, and every year we have our annual conferences. And in Turin earlier this year, we had our conference, and there was a discussion, a panel discussion about social media and the internet and young people. And there were young Polish women in the room, and they've been advising the Polish government about the best kind of policy and laws for young people. And some of the older people in the room were saying things like, why don't you just give up your phone? Why are you even doing this? And these young women were saying, hang on a minute. We like our phones. This is a form of communication. We know how to use it. We are the people who are the most experienced about the right kind of safeguards that we need for our peer groups. So I think Brando's understanding there of how young people are experts in this is really important. I've already talked a little bit about the fact that Youth IGF for me was this thing which was 24/7 every day. It's part of people's lives. It's not just the 1 week a year when you turn up at the IGF. And I think making the effort to be in the spaces where the politicians are making decisions is really important. And I do remember making a very big, a very strong case for Youth IGF to be part of the European Internet Forum, which is political advocacy for the internet. And that for me was really crucial because that's about lobbying. That's about being at the table. That's about being in the room, having breakfast and croissants and coffee with people when decisions are being made. And from my perspective, civil society actors and people who are defending human rights and inclusion need to be in all those spaces, not just when the IGF is happening, but actually making the effort to engage at that level. And sometimes that just takes a bit of boldness, Julia. It takes being a bit bold to say, I have a right to be here in this space because this policy, this technology affects me and affects the young people on a daily basis. And we know best about it. Yeah, I hope that made sense.
That's great, Julie. And I would like to be back to Brando. Brando, we know you need to go to be back to the vote room, actually. What do you think, Brando? Maybe just the last question. Is it good for the Youth IGF to be at the table at the European Internet Forum? And actually, from time to time, we are invited to speak as the Youth IGF, but not supported to act. So if that's true, who should be responsible for building that pipeline, for going from the speakers to the actors?
It depends on the willingness also of the members of European Parliament. And so I can support the idea of this upgrade. As I said, I think we should strengthen, in fact, our organization in terms of how we relate ourselves to the IGF, including the Youth IGF dimension. So I would be happy to support that. I know you have been participating in the framework and the format of the EIF, but we can do more in this sense. I think it's time, as we renew, hopefully, the mandate of IGF, that we also renew substantially the scale on how we engage with the youth under the IGF umbrella. So I can for sure support that. And I want to take the time also, before I will be leaving you for going back to a vote, to also thank Julie, that is a former colleague that has been extremely helpful in working on bridging the internet and technological dimension and community in the European Parliament with the instances of civil society, including the youth organizations. I've seen her work on that together in different contexts, including the Internet Forum. And so I just wanted to thank her for that effort, because I think we are now talking a bit also about the fruits of that effort at that time. So thank you very much, and let's stay in touch. And thanks to everyone that participated with me. I will leave you for the continuation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brando. Thank you for joining. And so, as Brando just said, we must invest in youth, not just as performers, but as builders. Messy, passionate, but still learning. But institutions often want polish. We still tend to recognize the unknown instead of making space for the new. Sophia, we're still recycling the same youth names, and what would it take to welcome the ones we haven't heard yet? You joined just this year and already shaped the Youth IGF at Geneva Saber Week. Do you feel you've been heard or simply included?
Thank you for this question. Yes, I definitely feel heard, and not just heard. I felt like my ideas were also received, and I had a great platform to connect with other participants, exchange perspectives, and also reach to experts and speakers. I think being able to engage with them directly and learn from them made this experience very meaningful to me. And it was my first time moderating an event in English, so it was also something new for me, and it was a great experience to just communicate and learn from the others. Overall, it's been inspiring to see how my involvement could impact also the IGF, and I'm very grateful for this experience. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you, Sophia, for your case, for your opinion, and for your experience that you just shared with us. I would like to turn now to all members of our studio one per one. Ask these two questions, and you're welcome to react on what you heard, but also bring your opinion on actually who should be responsible for building that pipeline, going from the role of speaker to the role of actor. So how can we make the situation and bring the situation to the level when the people will not be just speakers in the room, right? And that was actually our objective during these first two waves, during this first decade, to the actors when they will really modify or build and construct this digital future. I would like maybe first turn to our young participants who are now already experienced young leaders, dancing, Razoana, Levi, if you are still with us. Please react. Levi, go on. What is
So, in my view, what would need to create that pipeline in the first place, it I think takes us to identify individuals who we know are actually working on practical solutions towards advancing internet access. I'll speak on internet access because I'm biased to it, but also beyond just recognizing those that are actually practically approaching internet access. Such it can be projects around policy, it can be technical work, but it's identifying young people who are working on solutions that are advancing connectivity or internet access among the other aspects of the internet governance ecosystem, and bring them to the space where they begin to also present their idea and can speak. The second thing is creating a bridge between policymakers and young leaders so that they're not seen as, what do you call it, opposing parties, but rather partners to advancing the IG ecosystem as a whole. That way we create room to actually connect policy and people that are working as stakeholders and partners to advancing internet access and increased availability of internet related resources. That way we create that gap and bridge. And also I think acting on one of the recent comments made by people that have participated in parliament is we need the youth in these spaces because youth come up with certain ideas that may actually advance what we are trying to push for, which is connectivity for many, but also we need the youths to be seen as a force that is helping advance, not the ones that are misusing the resources available. That way, the youths become a critical pillar and a partner to advance the bridging of the digital divide that we've actually seen, especially where it's bad in Africa. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Levi. I think the all parliamentarians just said we do want to hear youth, right? So now the question is how from we pass from here to act, right? So to be really included. Would you like to react on that, Zuana?
Yes, of course. I completely agree with Levi, what Levi said. We need the parliament to act, but also at the same time, we need to actively engage youth from underrepresented regions, sectors, and collaborate with, maybe with schools, university, and grassroots organization to make it more effective. And also, what I have professionally and personally have learned so many from my experience that it not only when you participate in a discussion like this, it not only gives you the confidence to express your own views with the complex issues like data privacy, AI ethics. Today's youth is actually tomorrow's leaders. So definitely we need to work on that. And however, there are still room for improvement with the systems that we have. And what I would like to see is there are some structured mentorship programs, clear pathways for youth recommendation to reach to the decision maker. Too often the ideas share with the platforms like these and the community with the mechanism, and we need to make sure that this is documented somewhere, all the discussions, so that we can turn the real visibility that the policy influence requires more than participation. We need formal structures where youth proposals are documented, tracked, and responded by the policymakers. Funding for youth-led research and advocacy would also strengthen credibility and impact. So I believe this is a very big platform. This is a very effective platform. If we want to make it more effective, we need to actively start acting on that. Yet there is some room for improvement, but also if we make it more structurized, then it might be a very strong voice from the youth. Thank you so much, Julia.
Thank you, Razoana. Dancing, how do you react from what you just heard? And I think the question is from we need to the question of how.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I think it's been a great conversation, and I think the most important thing for that to be the way to go here is first addressing the issue of responsibility. I think it's easy to talk. They say talk is cheap, right? But the most important thing is owning those actions and being able to draft an accountability plan so that we can follow up and hold people responsible for some of those action points, including the youth ourselves that come into the room to talk. I understand that one of the great question around being able to be held responsible, especially for youth, is capacity, which of course Lever and everybody who has spoken before me has addressed. But I think when capacity meets responsibility from a youth standpoint, the involvement and acceptance for youth within policy framework conversations, implementation stage, and even evaluations and analysis becomes important. So I think the most important thing right here is to ensure that for every single cadre, and we have youth representation right there, it's important to ensure that we bring in those who have capacity to be in that conversation. One, but secondly, for those who inspire to be there, they equally go through proper training to be able to support the conversation and execute afterwards, because we just don't want to talk, right? We want to ensure that everything we say is being acted upon. And this talks about every single person in the room, from the start of us to the end of us, ensuring that when we speak, there is a log to ensure that we can follow up. I don't want to say there should be, but there will be definitely eventually if we fail to do our part. And I think that's my response to everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Danton. And it's a great bridge actually to our legacy and how and what was the conversation in between the decision makers at the IGF 2025 and the young. The conversation about capacity builders, but also skills and the need on skills. I would like to share with you this very short video and then be back to our parliamentarians for their final words.
Young people usually think that they know all about the internet. Questions around access, ethics, and governance are more urgent than ever.
I introduced to the Egyptian parliament the first draft bill on AI governance. Digital governance is one of the most pressing topics which every policymaker should focus on, should hold the governments accountable.
We're struggling to keep up with what is the latest ability of these devices, what is the latest use case, which is a great thing because it's people innovating, people coming up with brand new ideas, a real challenge for the people making policy.
It has a blessing and it has a curse. We have seen at the Middle East, for example, recently, how AI could be used in war. How could the casualties of civilians dying raise in numbers and in intensity to a great extent because you're using the technology as a weapon?
I think the question is like, what future we are leaving behind to that youth? And there's a lot of uncertainty right now about the future.
So don't focus only on technology, but focus on the people that you're trying to do that for.
So I think that's the great bridge to our very final words, and I would like to turn to our three senior speakers, Amira, Julie Ward, and Danielle Molokele. Amira, by the way, you were one of the persons present at this podcast that we recorded at the IGF 2025, and I think the word is great. That's about the future and how we care about these people. So, as we're talking today at the site of the United Nations General Assembly, when the future of the IGF mandate will be decided, what future do you see for the youth IGF or for this pipeline that we were talking about? And if you would like to react on what the young leaders just said, Daniel, maybe you.
Yeah. I think the message that we need to share, especially on this platform tonight, is to say that for the young people, we must consolidate from the first 10 years experience and legacy that we have. Make sure that we have a proper reflection and say what are the lessons learned and what can we carry forward and what can we leave behind, so that the next 10 years give us an opportunity to raise the levels in terms of youth recognition and youth appreciation. So going forward, young people should be more organized. They must not agonize, and make sure that they have a much more clarified role in terms of the whole IGF structure, and make sure that beyond having positions, they also have enough influence, not just at a global level, but also international level. And I see from a Zimbabwean point of view an opportunity for the youth aspect of the IGF being much more robust when it comes to engaging on issues of internet governance at a national level. That is an area where in the last 10 years, we have not really gone deep, especially if I look at a country like Zimbabwe. So we need to see that happening more to increase the influence of the youth. We must be stronger at a national level also. Thank you.
Thank you for your last word. Amira.
Yes, one of the main things which I care about is the accessibility, the language itself. We need to have like advocacy for making sure that internet is available in the local languages of many countries in this world, especially that there are too many topics where the people who are most affected with don't have the voice to raise their concern about, from climate change to war and conflict. So making sure that accessibility is there is extremely important. Besides advocating, like us, everyone who was here in the conversation, for the presence of youth, I always see that their presence themselves by themselves, they should talk about their topics, not just that every parliamentarian is advocating for youth engagement, but they themselves should be present as parliamentarians, as ministers, as policy shapers globally. And in my country, actually, I've seen a strike and a great increase in the representation of youth on too many platforms and in their presence in even the government cabinet. But I always see that whatever is there, it should be elevated and we seek for more. One of the things which I highly recommend is having a platform to recognize and to shed the lights on the IGF youth ambassadors or change makers. This could actually have the story being told, how they are engaged, how they contributed to changing some policies. And I always believe that peer-to-peer learning and peer-to-peer inspiration is very important, especially that what a young figure in Europe might encounter is very different from what a young figure in Egypt might encounter. And when we talk about Africa and that Egypt is one of the most youthful countries in the world, and definitely Africa is the most youthful continent, listening to the youth is the only key to shape real policies in a good way. Anchoring the youth IGF institutionally, not just informally, but having this experience to be linked to the parliaments, to be linked to the and reflecting back and telling these stories on a wider note. It could be a radar for youth as change makers in the internet governance topic. I highly recommend this. And also this platform could be taken as an opportunity to get more of funds and more of concentration on how to build their capacities, how to make them more of empowered and their voices are well heard.
Thank you. Thank you, Amira. Julie Ward, the former member of the European Parliament. We started with your strong message that you brought at the European Parliament back in 2017, but also your message during the first ever Youth IGF EU delegation high-level open forum at the IGF 2016. And so we'd like to close with your final message, Julie.
Okay, I agree with other people who've talked about things like traineeships in the institutions. I think young people should be given opportunities to work inside the European Parliament, inside the UN institutions, because they bring a lot of innovation, a lot of fresh ideas. But it's important also that young people get to know how these places work and where the blocks are and how to push doors open. And I also think that joining up the dots between different policy areas is really important. So this isn't just a tech issue, it's a development issue, it's a human rights issue, it's a democracy issue. And often in the European Parliament, I would hear people talk about policy cohesion, whereas I more often witness policy dissonance. And I think we have an opportunity, you have an opportunity to join up those different dots and show how all these things come together, actually. And when they do come together, then we make better policy. And then policymakers and decision makers need to be reminded that diversity in society is a strength. And so broadening out the type of people, the different communities that are involved in decision making is hugely important. And that means taking an intersectional approach. For example, involving young disabled people in tech policy is important. Women and girls who are tech geeks is really important. Involving young LGBT plus people is really important, because diverse societies are the most successful societies.
Right. Inclusion skills, diversity, a lot of work. And I think tonight, thank you, Julie, for your very strong message, as always. And I think tonight we didn't pass a resolution, but maybe we passed something between us, a line of vision. From what was built to what must still be lacking and still be risky. Hope is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but certainty that something is worth doing, right? Václav Havel wrote these few words decades ago. So the youth IGF was never built on guarantees. It was built on action without permission, and now we must go further. Youth must not stay on a side track. They must become actors in the main show, not decoration, not direction, not invited guests, but co-authors of the policy pipeline. Let's determine our legacy and our further direction. With that, we'll end our live conversation today, and we hope that, and we would like to send all our best wishes for the Internet Governance Forum mandate to be renewed this week in New York. Thank you, and bye-bye.